Like you, I thought that history didn't have anything to do with my life today. Then I discovered that some of my favorite movies and video games are about World War II.
Did you know the US basically saved the world from being conquered by the Nazis and Japanese? Thousands of sailors, soldiers, and airmen showed uncommon valor, in many cases giving their lives up to preserve our freedom.
Pretty amazing. And there's this one guy, Admiral Nimitz, who started out poor and fatherless to become the man who led the US to victory in the Pacific. We're gonna get to know this guy and how he did it.
And while we're at it, we're gonna show some amazing paintings of World War II by Texas artist Tom Lea.
In the late 1930s, the commander of the Pacific Fleet position came open in Hawaii, and President Roosevelt wanted to assign Admiral Nimitz to that position. That position was the second most important position in the U.S. Navy at that time, essentially in charge of all the Navy ships. So after being offered this position by the President, Admiral Nimitz refused, the second most important job in the Navy. And his rationale behind that was, he said, there are too many officers who are senior to me, and by putting me in that position, it would hurt the Navy. And the last thing he wanted to do was hurt the Navy. So in his mind, the Navy was much more important than him accepting that very important position. Approximately a year later, on the 7th of December 1941, the Japanese attacked Pearl Harbor. And since Admiral Kimmel was the admiral in charge and therefore was responsible for the defense of that island, the president fired him. Think about that. If Admiral Nimitz would have accepted that job, he would have been in Kimmel's place and he would have been fired. After the attack on Pearl Harbor and Admiral Kimmel being fired, Roosevelt called Admiral Nimitz and told him he was going to take command of the Pacific Fleet and that he had no choice now. Admiral Nimitz arrived on Christmas Eve there in Pearl Harbor, and as he toured around, he was shocked at the devastation of not only the ships, but the entire facility. And he knew how poor morale was, not only there in Hawaii, but back in the United States. But as he looked around, he said, you know, it could have been a lot worse. Number one, our aircraft carriers were at sea, so they were not touched. Number two, this significant fuel farm that we have here in Hawaii was also not touched. Number three, our ship repair facility was also not attacked. And think about it. This is Hawaii. The only way you get fuel to Hawaii is to bring it across. And if the ship repair facility had been attacked, it would have had to been rebuilt, and all of that would have had to come from the United States. So he saw that even though it's bad, it wasn't as bad as it could have been.
Admiral Nimitz was an awesome leader. He knew managing morale or people's attitude was as important as strategy.
He didn't focus on the negative, but focused on the positive in devastating situations and gave people hope.
I've got to stop looking on the dark side and be more positive like Admiral Nimitz.